Why conversations turn into arguments and how to stay connected instead. Not long ago, my daughter and I were texting. It started as something small. It usually does. And I'll say this first. I don't recommend serious conversations over text. Texting works fine for, can you grab milk? But when emotions are involved, we lose tone, body language, and the ability to really hear each other. Still, like so many of us do, we found ourselves in something bigger. At one point, she said something that landed hard, that I wasn't listening. That's a tender place for me. Listening is what I do. It's what I teach. It's how I show up in the world. And in that moment, I could feel the shift inside me, the pull to explain, to clarify, to show her that I was in fact listening. Because from my perspective, I was. But that wasn't her experience. And that's where conversations start to turn. The moment a conversation changes, most arguments don't begin as arguments. They begin in a moment like that one, where two people are having very different experiences of the same conversation. One person feels misunderstood. The other feels misrepresented. And suddenly the focus shifts. Instead of trying to understand, we start trying to be understood. Instead of listening, we start preparing our response. That's when the tension builds. That's when we hear things like, "You're not listening. That's not what I said. You don't understand me. You don't care." And now we're no longer in a conversation. Now we're in a standoff, or worse. What I chose instead. In that moment with my daughter, I had a choice. I could follow the instinct to defend myself, to explain my intention, to correct what felt inaccurate, or I could slow down. I paused. I let the initial reaction move through me instead of reacting on it, and I asked myself a different question, not how do I show her I'm right, but what might she be feeling right now? Then I responded from there. I reflected what I heard underneath her words, not perfectly, not in a polished way, just honestly, and something shifted. The conversation softened enough for us to stay connected instead of moving further apart. Why arguments escalate so quickly? Arguments often escalate because we move away from our own experience and into assumptions about the other person. When we say things like, "You're not listening," or "You don't care," or "You always do this," we may be expressing something we feel is real, but it tends to land as blame. And when someone feels blamed, they defend. It's automatic. And once both people are defending, no one is listening anymore. The power of speaking from your own experience. One of the simplest ways to change the tone of a conversation is to stay rooted in your own experience, not as a technique to get a better outcome, but as a way to stay grounded in what's true for you. Instead of "You're not listening," it might sound like, "I'm feeling frustrated because I don't feel understood." Instead of "That's not what I said," "I don't think I explained myself clearly." Instead of "You don't care," "I'm needing a little bit more connection right now." The shift is subtle, but it creates space, and that space is what allows listening to return. Slowing down helps us hear. Nothing about the facts of that conversation with my daughter changed in that moment. What changed was the pace. When I slowed down, I could hear more. I could hear the feeling behind her words instead of reacting to the words themselves. And when someone feels heard, even a little bit, the intensity does soften. And that's often all it takes to move a conversation back toward connection. Staying connected even when it's hard. Not every conversation will resolve easily. Not every moment will feel calm. And sometimes even when you do slow down and listen, the other person may still feel hurt or misunderstood. But staying connected doesn't require perfection. It requires presence, intention, willingness, a willingness to pause, a willingness to consider what the other person might be feeling, a willingness to stay with your own experience instead of assigning meaning to theirs. That's what keeps a conversation from becoming something it was never meant to be. And if you find yourself in a moment where emotions are high and it is hard to slow down or sort through what you're feeling, Hold is here for that. We offer confidential listening appointments with a trained, compassionate professional. No advice, no judgment, just space to process what you're experiencing and find your way back to clarity. Sometimes being heard is what makes it possible to listen again. You can book a confidential session here when you're ready at hearingoutlivedrama.com/book-online.